Welcome back, everybody. And if this is your first time watching, welcome to the One Choose Ministries podcast. It's Eric, and with me is a very special guest. He is the Mr. Miyagi to my Daniel LaRusso, my Yoda to my Luke Skywalker, my Dumbledore to my Harry Potter. Pastor Dave Ancorn, live here directly from Seattle, correct?
Well, yep, just south of Seattle, Kent, Washington.
Yes. And so today, you guys, it's that time of the year, not Christmas or Thanksgiving or anything like that. It's graduation season, guys. Everybody's, either graduating, moving on from high school to college, or moving from middle school to high school, or, going from college to, the rest of the world, or going from high school into college. It's that time where, it's considered to many the next step in your life. Is
big transitions, right? That's exciting. Yeah. I mean, congratulations, everybody.
Yeah, so congratulations to everybody that graduated. I already graduated, but that doesn't mean that I can't still play host every once in a while. But Pastor Dave, it could be that maybe some of the viewers here don't know you, or they maybe they've met you in passing, but they've never really gotten to know you. But why don't you introduce yourself to the viewers?
Yeah, well, I'm excited to meet everybody, and glad you're tuning in. I'm Dave Ancorn. I was most folks got to know me as the associate pastor at Portola Baptist Church. I was there from 2000 to roughly 2008, and I worked mostly with youth and the young families in the church, English speakers, though I did learn a lot of Spanish and spoke some Spanish while ministering there. But I was there living in the Casa Pastoral for 4 or 5 years, and met Eric and Elias and Elgin and everybody during that time. Right before then, I was at seminary across the bay at American Baptist Seminary of the West, and that's how I got introduced to Portola. And then I came up here to the Northwest and became the executive minister at a large African American church that was building a new church, and now I serve as an associate minister there. So so I've been doing ministry in one form or another for going on 25 years now.
Yeah. And not just only, as a pastor, but, you've had when I got to know you, you were pastor, you were associate pastor, but you were also, sound engineer, AV, minister and all that kind of things. And whenever anything broke, it was always like, ask Pastor Dave, because he knows how to do it. And, he's the man to go to.
Yeah. I grew up my dad was a trustee in our church growing up. And so he taught me how to fix everything from the boiler to the lights to everything. And then in college, I was an engineer, and it was mechanical engineer. So I've always been somebody who doesn't like just standing back. If it's broken, I want to fix it, including the world, people's hearts, and the life that's all around us. So, yeah, bit of a geek when it comes to all things audio and visual. So, though Eric has surpassed the master. So,
well, no, I wouldn't say
no
that.
Longer, no, I give the belt to Eric and to the rest of you.
Well, here's the thing, Pastor Dave. The day that I can do the crane kick perfectly, like you've mastered, then I will say, I will accept the title gratefully. As master, but I'm not there yet. Yeah. But Pastor Dave, it's ironic that you're kind of telling us, or telling the viewers and myself, this kind of your a little bit of your history, because in the time that I've known you, I've never asked you about that, and so I'm kind of curious to know, like, when you were making this switch from at least high school to college, like did you have your life figured out? Because when I met you, I was in high school, and I was myself still trying to figure out, like
Mhm.
what do I want to do? Like, and it was funny because in high school it seemed like such a normal thing that everybody was like, oh, when you go to college, you want to know, you have to know what you want to do, and blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah and XYZ, and it's always been hammered into, at least that's how it's been hammered into me.
Hmm.
But in reality, I sat there sometimes in class, and when people were talking about that, I was like, I just take one thing at a time. I have so many current things to deal with that when I get to that point of, crossing the bridge of high school to college, I'll figure it out. But did you
Yeah.
happen to have your, when you made that switch, did you
Yeah.
have
No,
to figure it
no,
out?
I was, I had a direction, probably is the best way to say it, but I didn't have things figured out um, in any way, shape, or form. I mean, a lot of folks, especially when they go into the ministry, they get a calling from God maybe while they're in high school. They know this is something they want to work towards. They start preparing themselves in a lot of ways. But for me, I wasn't that way. My call to ministry has been basically through a series of steps along the way where God would say, well, why don't you try this? And then the next thing, well, I see, this is where we need you. And then the next thing, and the next thing, and then, 1998, I went into seminary. But when I was just graduating high school, I was active in my church and went to church with my family, went on mission trips with the youth group. My youth group I went to a small church, so there was maybe 75 people in my church, maybe 4 or 5 youth. I know a lot of the churches out there are the same way, but so I went to a kind of a youth group at my high school and met folks there and got involved in some ministries through that. But mostly when I graduated high school, it's like I just want to go and learn. I knew I wanted to do something engineering wise or technical wise, maybe math, but yeah, it wasn't like, oh, I know I'm going to be a pastor or I know I'm going to do ministry. Um,
Mm,
it's at least in my life, when I got to the next point in that transition, I think the key thing for me was, being open to what God wanted me to do in that moment. Not,
mm,
have to have everything figured out, but have to know how I can be faithful in this one moment, right?
mm,
In this one choice, in this one weekend.
mm,
It's because I think the thing between, especially high school and college, or high school and the next thing, um, the key issue is, all right, you may have had a faith before, you may have gone to church with your parents, you may have accepted Christ, you may know a lot about God, but you step into that next phase and you've got to live it for yourself. You got
mm,
to, decide what's true, decide how it impacts you and what you do with your life, the choices you make. And that's when, when I started making those choices for myself, not just doing what my parents told me to do,
mm,
that's when uh, God started working through me, and I really started to understand the scriptures a lot more and
mm,
saw a lot of power in what God wanted me to do. So that was kind of the start in that transition,
mm.
for me. So
And so, I mean, did your parents also like encourage you as well, like to go to college? Like it wasn't like, you're gonna go to college. It was more like,
yeah,
like, hey, college is an option. We want the best for you. College is indeed an option, but if you feel like you would serve the world a little better, maybe
yeah,
getting out there and joining the
yeah.
workforce here and there, or
For me, at least from my mom's perspective, college was the only option.
mm,
Now she would have let me do anything that I felt called to do, but she was a teacher, so her um, from a very young age. We were pushed to go to college, and we did college tours. And my first college was down there in the Bay Area at Stanford, and so that's how I got to know San Francisco, how I got to know the peninsula, and it was that was kind of my goal in high school, was to go to a good college, and do things that would get me into a good college. I didn't know what I wanted to do with that. I just knew I needed to go to a good college. But it was also, a good way for me to get sort of break free a little bit from the parents and, find my own way. I grew up in a small town here in Washington, and over on the east side of the state called Spokane. It's 200,000 people. It's like, I always compare it to the Stockton of Washington State. So, but yeah, it's, I needed a place to sort of spread my wings and grow a little bit. So packed up my suitcase, traveled down here, lived for over a year down in the Bay Area. That was a good step for me to make that kind of step away. For some folks, it's, maybe they get an apartment, or maybe they just have a job. So they have a different circle of influence and friends that they can work on. It's a good thing. So, but for me, it was college was the place where I was going. So.
And so, take us through a little bit of the journey of kind of arriving to, becoming a pastor, because
Sure.
is that really where, like you said, you were studying mechanical engineering at first.
Yep.
And so kind of, take us through that, how you started at mechanical engineering, and then you said, what, God, if you're calling me to become a pastor, then, I'll do as you say,
Yeah. I think the key thing, and the one I'm thinking back, now granted it's a long time ago, but thinking back, the passage from Jeremiah 29 verse 11, where God is saying to Jeremiah and to all the people of Israel, it says, I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to bless you, not to hurt you, plans to give you a hope in the future. That was kind of the verse that I stuck my heart on, that God had plans for me, even though, maybe those plans were mechanical engineering, or, working in business or something like that. But the thing that I knew was that God had plans, and that I needed to be open to those plans. So first thing when I got to school, that, the way I saw God's plans is I walked in to my first college dorm, and to a roommate I knew, didn't even know, it was just somebody randomly assigned to me. He had two posters on the wall. One was Michael Jordan doing the dunk that you see on the hat, right?
Right.
This is 89.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the second was the Footsteps poster. That was, where, so God gave me a Christian roommate. And that Christian roommate, he knew California. He was from San Diego, but he helped me sort of get into, find a way through the first couple of weeks of college. And we decided to start going to a campus ministry together. So went to something called InterVarsity, which was basically a youth ministry based at the college. And that, within the first 2 weeks of starting school, I was going to services every Wednesday, meeting with the Bible study leader. We found a church off campus, even though I didn't have a car. I just, we hopped on the bus or got a ride with somebody and went to Menlo Park Press up the way. But that was the key thing was, God, the first step was, okay, you need a Christian community wherever you're at. Whatever you're doing, you need a Christian community where you can be sharpened, you can grow, you can lift up other people. You can learn to lead. And in those, you know, first years of school, it was I started leading Bible studies. I started working in the church, working with youth. The next year, I transferred back up here to Washington. Money was tight for my family, and so I transferred back to the UW where it was a bunch cheaper for my sophomore year. And I knew I needed a place where I could learn and serve and grow. So found a different campus ministry, and even though I knew a lot of more people at University of Washington, that became the place that formed me, into start looking at ministry. So I went on some pretty big mission trips with folks. So halfway through my junior year, I went to inner city Philadelphia and worked with youth. Did basically a midnight basketball at night and summer camp, vacation Bible school during the day. So did that for 5-6 months in Philadelphia. Came back, did some training through Campus Crusade, which is now called Cru, in how to effectively evangelize and communicate in Colorado the next summer. And then when I graduated from college, I stayed in engineering. It's something I was good at. But the whole time I was taking history classes and I was taking other classes that would broaden me and prepare me for if I wanted to go into seminary. So that I walked out with an engineering degree, but I also walked out with, not just knowing how to do flow calculations and pipes.
Right.
So, that type of stuff. Right. So all along the way, it was like, okay, God, what do you want me to do this summer? Right. I got some extra time. What can I do? Oh, well, let's try, this ministry, or let's help out with tutoring, or, I worked with the reason I went and did the inner city thing in Philadelphia was because I did tutoring for kids here in Seattle, my sophomore year. Just, it was, you come after school, you get tutored in your math or your science, and then there's a little Bible study and we feed you. And that was, my first experience with ministry.
Someone in the chat is saying, engineering degree put to use in Stockton, California, built a stage along with the Redimido worship team.
Yeah. Yeah. and that's the thing, it's God will use everything if you let him, right? It does not matter what gifts God has given you. That's the reason God doesn't list a bunch of jobs in the Bible in Corinthians where you need this or this. No, he gives gifts, and those gifts are the things that should be used for the growth in the kingdom of God. So, I'm in engineering. I can look at an electrical engineering diagram and see which way the cables are supposed to go and calculate how much light needs to hit a stage.
Right.
But, I don't do that because, I want to make a bunch of money. I do it because I want people to, be impressed by God.
Well, and it's kind of interesting that you say that, like, that's kind of how you approached everything that, when you went into pastoring, because it kind of it rubbed off on me as well. Because, when I met you, I was in high school, and again, at the time I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so when you showed me, to use your word, you showed me the direction of like, hey, there's this whole world of, sound and audio engineering. Like it opened my mind to a little bit of, like, okay, like I really love doing this audio thing, let me go explore, the world kind of, and see what the world has to offer in terms of like, in terms of a skill that I can bring back to kind of, benefit my, Portola and, everything like that. And so, again, to say, to summarize it up, it was like, you introducing me and taking me under your wing was the little mustard seed that kind of bloomed into, what I've been doing for the past I don't know how many years anymore
Yeah.
at this point. I've lost track. So
Yeah, but and that's the thing is, for me, you rarely saw me at the soundboard running the service, right?
right.
I have terrible ears. I don't hear well. I don't, so I can run every cable to the soundboard, but I
Mhm.
shouldn't be the one behind it. God needs folks like you and others, who are in front of the mic or playing the instruments. I mean, everybody who knows me knows you don't want me to sing, but those things are gifts that God has given to the body,
Right.
and it's vital that everyone hears that call from God and helps them to find the spot where they can really bless others. So that was it. It's the way I got into ministry was after I graduated from college. I really wanted to kind of do something big for God. I didn't know if I wanted to go into the church, so I became a missionary in China. So I was a
Mm.
missionary for a year, taught English, and shared the gospel with students and those at the university I was in northern China. Did that for a year and came back. But when I was in Hong Kong, I was trying to decide, okay, should I extend for a year? Should I stay in China? All those things. And I really felt God calling me to bless others through the local church. That it was, I could be there in China and I could do work, but I really saw my gifts leading me to um, work in churches because I was blessed by a church growing up. I was
Mhm.
blessed in even my tiny little 75-person church. Um, and because I was blessed, I knew I needed to come back and go to seminary because I didn't know enough. I
Mhm.
needed to be prepared and understanding the Bible, understanding how to reach folks. And so, um, but it was because I'd done the little things before, it got me ready to make the big decision, being able to trust God that, yeah, it's going to be okay. I don't need to, be an engineer to be successful. I need to follow God to be successful. And that's where um, came back and actually went into engineering, but with the purpose of saving up money so I could, you know, come down and go to seminary in the Bay Area. So and find a good seminary where I could learn.
Wow. So, I mean, it sounds like, God took you literally from your own backyard all the way around the
Mhm.
world. And then he's like, all right, time to bring you back. And, now that you've, gained so much wisdom and knowledge,
Yeah.
now it's time to put it to use for me,
hmm
and
and it was just about trying to find the spot where I'd be uh, most effective, and
uh,
that's the thing. I mean, I could have done a lot of stuff probably, but yeah, I just felt God calling me to work with churches. So because everybody wanted to start, be a missionary or do really big things, but I saw the power in doing the straight, consistent stuff. So
right. So, I mean, Pastor Dave, I kind of am curious because, like, I'm certain that our experiences are completely different. But I want to know is how did you balance your spiritual life with school? I'm assuming you also were working as well as going to
mhm.
school, and obviously everyone has a social life,
Yeah, yeah.
so
Oh,
how did you balance all of that is kind of my my next question, because like there are times where like I'm like, for example, I mean, when I was at least in school, I would be swamped and I'd be like, all right, I need to spend this whole weekend studying for a final, or like I
mhm,
need to spend time to get getting this paper written, that way I can turn it in Monday morning. And there were times where I will admit that I had to, pull back a little bit, and say like, hey, can someone cover, because I need to focus on this paper that I need to finish, and I'm
sure.
halfway there, or I
Mhm.
barely started.
Yeah.
Insert adjective here. So I'm curious to know, how did you manage that? Because again, I'm assuming, because again, you said you were working, going to school, and again, also balancing a social life. How did you also balance all of that with your spiritual life?
Yeah, I think for me, it was important to sort of set up a routine,
Mm,
right, wherever I was at. So, and generally it would be okay, I'd get a school schedule, and then I would put in whatever ministry I was being a part of.
mhm,
So, um, usually that was a Wednesday night or something like that, right? Some sort of service. And then Sunday morning, um, I was the weird uh, guy who would get up on Sunday morning, um, go to church. A lot of folks wanted to sleep in, but um, to me, that was kind of what grounded me, right?
mm,
And that kept me able to keep the priorities straight. Um, and then the next, fit in the work where I could. I did have a fairly flexible workplace.
mm.
Although, I mean, I worked everywhere in college, so it was, I could work 6 hours one day and 4 hours the next, and kind of fit it in around the other stuff. But it was, yeah, and then the social life. I did a lot of social life through the ministries and those type of things. But hung out with roommates, and we always found time. It probably where I made it all up was lack of sleep. But that's all right.
Well, I mean, again, because again, it's interesting, and again, there were because again, like, I mean, maybe it's because like I never really kind of thought to put it into a schedule. I'm more of like I have to. Not to say that church isn't a priority. That's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Everybody, please don't freak out. Internet, that's
Yeah.
gonna be like, oh, but it was like I understand because like again, not to say that church wasn't a priority, but there were times where sometimes one thing had piled up so much, all my schoolwork had
Hmm.
piled up, and there were times where, because again, at the time, at least when I was going to city and going to state,
Yeah.
I was working, midnights to 6, 8 in the morning, or I'm sorry, midnight to 8 o'clock in the morning. And I mean,
Oh.
even though again, it was a very not, high pressure job where, you're, like you're calculating or you're counting or
Mhm.
you're doing numbers or anything like that. It wasn't like that. I was at least also fortunate enough to, to be able to do my work while I was at,
Mhm.
do my homework while I was at work. And so, but then there were times where I like, like I would come home, like maybe sleep 20 minutes before going to church. And then there were
Mhm.
days where I was just like, I can barely stand,
Yeah. No, and
because
that's
I just
then
the
it's
lack of sleep and just, like just being like physically, just drained. So, and there were times where I asked, a brother here and there, be like, hey, like, is it possible you can cover for me? Or, because like, I spent all night literally working and doing
sure.
homework, and
Well, and
I have to
that's
focus
smart.
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and
Well,
that's you don't
I
want to be falling asleep in church. And the reason for me it was important to go to church because the college ministries I were a part of, there was basically no one older than 30. It
mm,
was, and church, the thing that's unique about church is if you find a good ministry, there are folks that have been through what you've been through and will build into you if you go to church, right? You get to know those grandparents and those parents who can support you when things are really difficult. Because
mm,
the thing about the early 20s, right? It's you got to make some serious decisions. You got
mm-hmm.
to you most people go through some really difficult times, and I was far away from my family, um, and it was important for me to have somebody I could ask questions about or get some help from, or
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing.
Right.
So it's you know I don't think folks expect a college student to be at church every Sunday. But I think if you're there and you make relationships with folks, even if it's just, one or two, there's somebody that you can help out along the way. They will build into your life and be, the resources that you need.
Right.
For me in college, it was the pastor at the church that I went to here in Seattle. He was the one that asked me to lead the youth group for the first time. He was the one that let me stay in his house when I came back from China for 9 months while I was getting ready to trying to find a job and get into seminary. So, him and his wife they blessed me in so many ways because we built that relationship in church. So
Right.
it was
and obviously, being that he was a pastor, it's like, hey, Brother Dave, if you have any questions, or if there's anything that I can help you with spiritually, feel free. I'm here to talk. Or again, maybe you didn't understand something in in church or in my message. Feel free to just have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, there was other things. Went through breakups, went through relationship troubles, trying to figure out jobs, what to do, that type of stuff. He was always willing to sort of say, it's all right, you're going to make it through this. We'll get, we'll figure this out. Try over here, do this, that type of stuff. So,
right.
And that's what I try and do now. Right. So God's brought me through plenty of things. And so I'm trying to be that resource for those that find those folks in church that I can build into their life. So,
right. So, Pastor Dave, let me ask you, what would you say is your fondest memory of, graduation, whether it's high school or college? What is your fondest memory that you have?
Fondest memory. Well, I think, I think for me, the fondest memory in sort of graduation, I had the sort of traditional high school graduation, but there were about 7 of us from school that after we graduated, we went on a camping trip, and I was involved with camping quite a bit when I was in high school. And so the 7 of us, a lot of people who'd never been camping before, decided to go on this camping trip. And it was a crazy mess. It was a disaster. We drove up this mountain in the middle of Idaho in the dark. We hiked into the campsite into the dark. We started a fire. I slashed my finger open. My buddy had to, who still my best friend to the day, had to bind it up without stitches. But we stayed the whole weekend. We had this great time, but it was just like the most ridiculous thing that I know God was looking out for us because we should have died, up there on that. It was a lot of fun. That was very, very memorable for us.
To summarize it up, the whole thing was just
ay caramba.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the fact that we made it down the mountain, and I walked into my house and with a big throbbing finger, and my mom looked at me and said, "Turn around, we're going to the hospital now." It was a good thing. So, but the guy who wrapped up my finger is now a doctor. So it's good. It was prep.
Hey, his degree already paid for itself, right?
Exactly.
And with
I
no
knew
stitches.
he was going to be a good doctor right then. So, but
right.
that was I think just the first kind of trip away with the friends, sort of by ourselves was good. There were we thought we could handle it. We didn't, but we made it.
Well, that's funny because at least in my experience, my fondest memory, I'm glad I'm glad our phones are getting more powerful by the minute and by every year. But my fondest memory, at least for when I graduated, was um, I was up for I didn't know that I was up for a nomination. This was from San Francisco State.
Hmm.
Apparently, I was up for nomination for an award, and I was like, really? Okay. I mean, for me, it was like, all right, if I get the award, awesome. If I don't, all right, well,
Yeah.
just to be nominated is enough. But somebody recorded it because it was at the ceremony, and they were like, all right, guys, so now the nomination for I forgot what it was. I think it was something. I think it was like for production. Um,
Hmm.
and it was me and this other student, that it came down to reenact the whole thing. It went like this. It went like it was like, all right, and the nomination, or here are the nominations for production, and the winner is a tie. Drama. And then they announced the names. They announced the name of the other student and my name, and I was like, no way. I went up to the stage trying to hold back my tears, and it turned. Everyone just in the crowd just cheering my radio name. They were just like, everybody was just like, chips, 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 chips. I'm like, oh my Lord.
Yeah.
Again, for me, it was I never expected that much
Hmm.
adoration,
Yeah.
from a group of individuals. Because I'd always believe, at least for me, what I was trying to do is like I always put other people kind of before myself. Whether it's like, hey,
Sure.
can you take a minute to help me understand how to do this transition, or hey, do you know how to fix said computer that's here in the radio station or whatever. And so for me, that's probably my fondest memory that I'm glad somebody recorded, because then 2 minutes later, after they announced my name, they just send me the video, and I'm like, okay, well, now I have this to remember forever. So
Yeah. Well, at least you didn't have to sit there and sort of politely clap for the other person, right? While they're videoing you.
exactly right. Yeah. Oh man, but yeah. So I mean, Pastor Dave, you've done the graduation thing, with your parents watching you graduate, but you are now on the other side of
Hmm.
things because you are a parent and your kids are graduating as well.
Yep.
And so I have to ask, how has that experience been? Because you're going up there and you receiving, you're like, yeah, all right, you don't have you didn't at the time, you didn't get the feeling that like
Yeah.
like I'm proud of you. But now that
Oh, yeah.
you're a parent and you have kids of your own graduating, how is that?
Yeah. Grace graduated 2 years ago, 2019, before COVID. Stephen will graduate next year. So, um, you know, I think for me, it was, I was incredibly proud when Grace graduated, and she had gone through a lot of struggles, but she worked through them all, and she got through, and she um, worked and got to that graduation stage and was going on to school. I couldn't be more proud. I was also terrified because as a parent, right? Um, and this is where you pray as a parent, right? Because you're sending your child, like when I graduated, I was so excited to get out of the house and go off on my own and do something new and get out into the world. Um, but now I know how scary the world is sometimes, and so
Mm.
sending my baby girl even up to Seattle, which is a place I know pretty well. That was scary, but so the way I should probably put it is, it was a great opportunity to trust God. Uh, that God would protect her the way He protected me when
Right.
I made that jump. Um, I don't try and hover. I send a text every once in a while, but I let her, you know, work her own. I mean, she's involved in some ministries, and working with high school students. And, God's taking care of her the way God took care of me. So why shouldn't I trust God for that as well? So, but not saying I'm not, terrified. I mean, and I did the same thing for when youth graduated from Portola or NBCF. I know it can be difficult out there, and but God's good. God's always good. So it's doesn't mean that I won't freak out a little bit if things go wrong, but we're excited for the future that God has for her and for Stephen too. So they're totally different people. Right. So we'll see how it goes with Stephen. And, he'll be, if this COVID thing ends, he'll be graduating next year and seeing where things go from there. So,
So, Pastor Dave, what is some advice that you would give someone who's maybe moving on to college?
Mm-hmm. So, advice to college. I mean, I think the key thing for folks is that like high school, there's a lot of pressure, right? You're going to be pressured to choose a major and to find a job and to do all these things. But you do also have to give yourself time to make the right choice. That's the, college is 4 years or 2 years long for a reason. You don't have to walk in there knowing exactly the right thing to do. And you don't want it to take 7 years either, if you can avoid it. It's an expensive thing. But the key thing is just let yourself, take a few classes that are maybe outside of what you're interested in, see if you're any good at it. You may have taken a psychology class in high school that you hated, but that was because of the teacher, not because of the course. And you may be really good at it. So stuff like that, it's just take a little bit of time, pray about it, make the right choices. That's what that's my advice for college. So
someone here in our chat is asking, as you share many years in San Francisco, can you still order in a taqueria in Spanish?
Yes. Well, the problem is, all right, so I do that and nobody expects me to speak Spanish. So they wonder if I'm speaking Chinese because I think I'm saying it correctly. And I still do, even here in Kent, we've got let's just say it's not the same as La Corneta, but it's decent, and we order, and there's even a pupuseria just down the street from us. So we stop by, but I do order here. But if I really want to get my point across, I let Jen order because she's.
I can imagine a little bit of the confusion on the waiter or waitress's face, and they're just like, I did not expect that. Yes. Not from you, bro. Not from you.
No, I think the most the biggest surprise is, I work in a factory during the day, and a lot of the folks speak Spanish as their primary language, right? And when they first start, they don't know that I speak Spanish, and so they'll be chatting with each other and maybe not speaking in the most appropriate way for the workplace, and I'll just turn to the side and say, "Okay," and start speaking a little bit of Spanish, and then things change a little bit. So that's always good.
Subtext. Yes. I know what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Real on tuning into the live stream, and he says that's why Ileana is in martial arts, and we'll take her gun range. We'll take it to. I will take her to the gun range when she's older. Oh no! Yeah. Oh no! Oh man! So Pastor Dave, the college route is not for everyone, and some people feel like there are indeed other alternatives, one kind of being joining the armed forces and joining the military. So I mean, what is some advice for them? Because I feel like the people that are Christians and go into the armed forces, it's a very fine line that you have to walk, because spiritually, the Bible says, do not kill, and
Mm-hmm.
and many other things. But if you're doing it in in the name of your country, or
Yeah.
you're doing it to protect your country, there's a very fine line that you have to walk. And
Yeah.
so I mean, what is some advice? Or you may have experience with that, so what would you say to them?
Yeah. I actually got a scholarship to have the Navy pay for school coming out of high school, and so I was trying to decide whether or not I should go into the military or not. You got a tradition of some folks in the one of my great uncles is a general in World War II, and another guy my family dodged the draft for Vietnam. So I got both sides of the family, right?
Mm.
Um, but I think the key thing is sometimes the military is a really good choice for folks because of maybe they're trying to get out of a family situation or an environment where they may be at risk or whatever the case may be, or maybe they're looking for something to pay for school. And most of the time in the military, it's about getting yourself prepared. And sometimes the structure of the military is a good option for folks because they know they don't have good discipline, or they know they don't have good study habits. And maybe that, is the spot that gets you ready for college or gets you ready for the next phase of your career.
Mm-hmm.
It's you can, but you got to judge your heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the key thing with it is, and just like any job, sometimes it's tough to be a Christian wherever you're at.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you choose to go into the military, there are folks that will respect your faith and some folks that won't. And you got to know and decide how you're going to stand up for your faith, how you're going to evangelize others, and how you'll find those communities, right there within the boat you're on or the division you're in, how, who the chaplain is, whatever's going on, so that you can not only grow in your faith, but also help the lives of those around you.
Mm-hmm.
I work with a lot of veterans right now. There's a big base just right next to where I work. So a lot of veterans there. And armed services is tough on families, and it's tough on people sometimes. And so being able to support one another, support your brothers and sisters in the military with, a scripture or a word, some sort of life is essential to help them, make it through that last 6 weeks till they can get home again.
Right.
So it's, whatever the next step is for folks, you got to think about it kind of like a calling, right?
Right.
What are you called to? And it may not be forever. It may just be for the next 4 years or 2 years or enlistment or this summer. But, what is God calling you to do? Where do you think God can build into you and how you can build into others? And that's kind of the way, it was one of the reasons I didn't choose the military at that point was two reasons. One, it was right at the beginning of the Gulf War, so I wasn't sure if I was ready to make those difficult decisions. And the second was, it was for those of you who are old school San Antonio Spurs fans. David Robinson was in the Naval Academy at that same time. He was 6'9", and he got put on a submarine. And I did not want to hit my head every day. I knew the same thing would happen to me. So it was so that and because I had another way of paying for school, I ended up not choosing it. But
right. Well, and I think also I think it's kind of funny that you mentioned it because the best way I heard it explained was I don't know if she's in the chat. At our sister Tatiana Guadamus, aka Mr. Ronald Aragon's wife.
Oh yeah.
I think I heard it best explained by her, and that's if you are indeed deciding to go join the armed forces, you know it depends. Go with a clean heart, I guess you could say, right?
Hmm.
Go with the intent of serving your country. Don't go with with malice in your heart, because then that I've not to say that you're doing it for the wrong reason or anything like that, but if you have like a to put it simply, if you're going with a murderous intent,
Yeah.
then it's definitely not for the right reason.
Yeah, and that's the same with any. I mean, God calls us to serve, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's whatever you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
serve others, serve God.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we were put on this earth. And if you're serving your country at the same time, God bless.
God, yeah, exactly. So, what about also? I mean, so not just the graduates that are maybe going off into the military, but maybe again, as I said before, you know, college isn't the it's the traditional route, but it's not the route for everyone. So, what are some examples that maybe somebody should look at if they're deciding, like, oh, I'm gonna go travel, or oh, I'm gonna see, I want to go see the world, or I'm
Mhm.
not gonna, then I'll do college when I come back or whatever.
Yeah.
What would what would you suggest someone take a look at in the Bible to kind of keep themselves rooted?
Yeah. So if you're, no matter what your plans are out there, I think um, if you're going to be traveling or something like that, make sure I mean, everyone's got an app, right? That you can
Mm-hmm.
take your Bible, get a reading plan,
Mm-hmm.
and then get a somebody you can connect with. Maybe it's somebody from the church back home, or somebody who can be hold you accountable, and b you can encourage too. The I think for those that maybe aren't going into maybe they're going straight to work, right? They got a
Mm-hmm.
family situation, they got a life, they've got some bills they got to take care of, all
Kids,
those
who
things.
knows?
Kids,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it happens. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got to make sure that you're ready for whatever the situation might be, and not be afraid to um, say, this is the right choice for me now, to sort of walk into that and seize what God has for you in that moment. I think the thing is, don't be discouraged if you're making that choice to not go to college or not do what's normal, because God can do amazing things with the moments that you give Him. I think um, some of the most amazing moments that I've ever had in my life are when I've taken just a weekend, or um, a couple of weeks sometimes, to work with a group to help them do something different. That I had building houses, working with um, different folks. I did English practice things, all sorts of different opportunities that didn't require college at all. Right? It's skills I had. I could do them. If you want to travel, go somewhere that try and get to be a part of a mission trip. Go see what God's doing in some other part of the world. Um, it helped me choose my section of life, and it wasn't because I went to college that I went and did that. Um, I think the folks that sometimes college isn't the right thing now too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you may need to work for 3 or 4 years for family situation, or for just you're not ready in that space yet. You're burned out on school, but I think there's a lot of, you got to figure out what you want to do before you go and try and learn about it. Mm-hmm. So I would recommend that you don't give up the habit of learning, but you are preparing for what, God's calling to you for the next phase, right? I've thinking about it. I've probably had 6 careers. I mean, totally not different jobs, careers.
Right.
And every step along the way, those type of things, God prepares you for it for years beforehand. So when I became an missionary, God had prepared me in college by leading Bible studies. When I became an engineer after I came back, I had connections that built up from church that got me that first engineering job. When I went to seminary, my parents' church are the ones that got me into the seminary, and then someone at seminary sent me to Portola because they said it was a good church. And then from Portola, the Convención, they introduced me to the church that I knew up here. And then when the economy turned down and I stopped doing pastoring full time, someone in that church got me a job in a factory here that I used my engineering degree that God had prepared me for 20 years prior and managing people. So, every step, different career, but God prepared it. And, college was a part of that, but it wasn't the only reason. So God was the reason.
Right. No, and again, it's really kind of interesting because you can, again, as you said, when you explain your whole journey, you can kind of, and it's exactly as you said, God wanted to prepare you for, for missionary. Then, you know what, like, I'm going to give you a few chances, or I'm going to present you the opportunities to lead a Bible study. And, from there, each one built on top of the other.
Yeah. You start in a sound booth, just as an example, you might start in a sound booth, and then you might come to be in front of the mic, and then when you're in front of the mic, you might tell somebody about God, just as a random example.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's happening exactly as we're speaking.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Pastor Dave, I mean, there's the personal side of, graduation and everything, but also, how can the church spiritually help support, students who are graduating or who are, about to, take this next step or, this next leap of faith, if you don't mind?
Well, I think the folks in the church need to honor the work that's gone on, not only by the students, but also by their parents, right? Because it takes just about everybody to get folks graduated, whether it's college or high school, and whether it's the finances or the time that somebody spends in the books and all that stuff. Honoring is important. Bible asks us to give honor where honor is due, and honor's due. But I think also the church needs to support, to give students the resources that they need to take the next steps of their faith, but also give them a little bit of space to make it. So it's, the church, I think, is at its healthiest when everyone is building into everyone else. And so, you have young people, youth doing their part. You have the older folks helping those youth make the right decisions, but also letting them make their own decisions.
Right.
And that's always a tough balance to have. Right. So sometimes you can't go to your parents' church that you grew up in because kind of everybody knows you, and you never get that chance to grow. Sometimes churches are okay, and they give, they're just been waiting for you to take that next step, and you can continue to grow. But maybe God takes you to a different town. You got to find that place where you can grow. And the church has a key role in helping young adults grow, and that should be primarily what they're about. So.
Well, very well said, Pastor Dave. I mean, again, I appreciate having you on the show or on the podcast. Obviously, I don't know why I said show. Probably just out of sheer habit at this point. But speaking of honoring, it's time now, Pastor Dave.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Are you going to clap? We're going to clap politely.
Oh yeah, we're gonna clap for sure. But I want to preface this right now. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, but they're probably going to pronounce it wrong at graduation anyway.
Okay.
Forewarned. So here we go. So, we're talking about graduation, and it wouldn't be appropriate but to honor some of the graduates here that are, we've found out they're graduating. So here we go. First graduate is Danny Heronomi. Oh man, again, they're gonna pronounce this wrong anyway. But here we go. Heronomio. Again, I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong, but congratulations, Danny. Also have Diana Perez and Sienna Perez as well. Diana is graduating high school, and Sienna is graduating middle school. So congratulations. We also have from La Iglesia de Monte Orobe, we have Diego Antunes. Let me turn that down. Alondra Rodriguez, Jesus Castro, Cristian Martins, and Adan Padilla. Hey, from La Iglesia Emmanuel de la Comunidad is Otoniel Carrion. He's graduating high school. Hey, shout out to Otto. And also, shout out from Portola Baptist Church, Ileana Crisostomo, who's graduating high school, and Elmer Crisostomo, who's graduating middle school. And to anybody who maybe did not hear their name called for graduation or anything like that, congratulations to the class of 2021. You did it, guys. You earned it.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, I mean, class of 2021, you've probably put up with more struggle than most graduates ever and not had near the celebration that you should have gotten for putting up with a year of Zoom classes. So well done if you're graduating. Keep at it. Keep learning. Keep growing. You've proved you can do it.
Yes, exactly. And so with that, Pastor Dave, we've come to the end of the show. I'm going to leave the rubber ducky up there because, a lot of people ask, why did you put a photo of a graduating rubber ducky? Because rubber duckies make you smile. I don't know why. But Pastor Dave, if you wouldn't mind closing us out in a word of prayer, and that way we can tell everybody who's watching the live stream or who's probably watching this on rebroadcast, we can tell them to tune in next week. So Pastor Dave, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. God, we thank you that you've brought us to this day, and we want to especially thank you for the way in which you've blessed these graduates, that you've given them the strength, you've given them the fortitude, you've given them the smarts so that they can continue to grow and learn and make it through in difficult times. You're the one that gave them the perseverance and the patience. And we ask that tonight you would continue to help them and bless them and help them to choose the next path forward so that they can continue to serve you and grow and help others in this world. I pray that you would be with all who are listening to this podcast, that your blessings would rain down from heaven, that they would know the power of God, and that your spirit would work in them and through them to reach this world with the power of your gospel. Youth, young adults, all of us together are the ones that are going to help shape this world and take it from pandemic to peace. And I pray that you would be the one that guides us all in helping this world find you, love you, and follow you. We pray this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. So congratulations again, class of 2021. You guys did it. You know, you struggled and you did it all. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this week. Make sure to tune in next week as we are doing our Father's Day special. So you don't want to miss that. Thank you, everybody, tuning in on Facebook and on YouTube. We love you. We appreciate it. Peace.
God bless y'all.